The garage was quiet, dust motes swirling in the late afternoon sun as John Miller ran his hand over the faded hood of his daughter's old SUV. The vehicle still smelled faintly of her, vanilla air freshener, a hint of lavender from the sachet she'd tucked in the glove box, and the ghost of fast food fries from late-night study sessions. She'd left for the West Coast 3 weeks ago, chasing a new job and a new life, her goodbye hug lingering longer than usual, her eyes shining with a mix of hope and something he couldn't quite name. "Take care of her, Dad," she'd said, tossing him the keys with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. He'd assumed she meant the car, but as he sat in the driver's seat that evening, the engine rumbling to life, he realized she might have meant something more. Out of habit, John tapped the GPS screen, intending to clear her old addresses and start fresh. But one entry caught his eye, a set of coordinates saved under the name, "For Dad." His heart skipped. He almost laughed, thinking it was a forgotten errand or a quirky surprise, but curiosity got the better of him. He pressed navigate, and the calm, robotic voice guided him out of town, past the familiar streets and into the winding backroads that cut through the hills. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple, and John's mind wandered to memories of his daughter, her first driving lesson, her stubborn independence, the way she'd always kept her secrets close. The GPS led him farther than he expected, the roads narrowing, the trees closing in, until he found himself at the edge of a dense forest, facing a gravel driveway that disappeared into the shadows. He hesitated, the engine idling, a prickle of unease crawling up his spine. Why here? Why now? He checked his phone, no signal. The only sound was the ticking of the cooling engine and the distant call of a crow. He almost turned back, but something in the way the address was labeled, "For Dad," made him press on. He parked, grabbed a flashlight from the glove box, and followed the driveway on foot, the gravel crunching beneath his boots. The path led to an old, abandoned farmhouse, its windows boarded, the paint peeling in long, curling strips. The mailbox was empty, but the mud around it was marked with fresh footprints, small, like his daughter's. John's heart pounded as he circled the house, his flashlight beam catching on a scrap of paper wedged beneath the porch. He knelt, hands shaking, and pulled it free. In his daughter's handwriting, a single line, "If you're here, you're ready to know." The words sent a chill through him, a mix of fear and anticipation. He pushed open the creaking door, the darkness inside swallowing the last of the daylight. The air was thick with dust and the scent of old wood, and somewhere in the shadows, a floorboard creaked. John's breath caught. He called out his daughter's name, but only silence answered. He moved deeper into the house, every sense on high alert, the beam of his flashlight trembling as he searched for another clue. In the kitchen, taped to the underside of the sink, he found a small key and a note, "Look under the floorboards." His hands shook as he pried up a loose board, revealing a metal box, cold and heavy in his grip. Inside, a stack of letters, a USB drive, and a photograph of his daughter with a man he didn't recognize. The first letter began, "Dad, if you're reading this, I need your help. Please trust me." John sat back on his heels, the weight of the box in his lap, the darkness pressing in. He realized that whatever secret his daughter had left for him, it was bigger and more dangerous than he could have imagined. And as the wind howled outside, rattling the old windows, John knew he was about to uncover a truth that would change everything. John's hands trembled as he unfolded the first letter, the paper soft and creased from being read and reread by someone in distress. The words were written in his daughter's unmistakable script, but the tone was nothing like the cheerful notes she used to leave on the fridge. "Dad, if you're reading this, it means you found the box. I'm sorry for dragging you into this, but I didn't know who else to trust. I need you to be careful. Don't talk to anyone about what you find here, not the police, not even Mom. There are people watching, and I'm scared." John's heart pounded as he read on, the letter painting a picture of a life he'd never imagined for his daughter. She wrote of a man named Victor, someone she'd met through work who had seemed charming at first but quickly revealed a darker side. "He started asking questions about you, about the farm, about our family. I think he's involved in something illegal, money laundering, maybe worse. I tried to get away, but he threatened me. He said if I went to the police, he'd hurt you." The words sent a chill through John, his mind racing with fear and anger. He looked at the USB drive, its plastic casing innocuous but suddenly heavy with meaning. He pulled his laptop from the car, plugged in the drive, and waited as the files loaded. There were dozens of audio recordings, phone calls, conversations in parking lots, snippets of Victor's voice, low and menacing. "You know what happens to people who cross me," Victor said in one recording, his tone icy. "You want your old man to stay safe, you'll do what I say." John's stomach twisted as he listened, the reality of his daughter's fear settling over him like a shroud. There were also photos, Victor meeting with men in expensive suits, exchanging envelopes in shadowy corners of the city. One file was a video, shaky and grainy, showing Victor handing a briefcase to a man John recognized from the local news, a city councilman recently indicted for corruption. The evidence was overwhelming, but it was the last file that broke John's heart. A video message from his daughter, her face pale and drawn, her eyes rimmed with tears. "Dad, I'm sorry. I tried to handle this on my own, but I'm in over my head. If anything happens to me, please take this to Alan, he's the only cop I trust. And Dad, I love you. Please be careful." John sat in the darkness of the abandoned farmhouse, the weight of the box in his lap, the wind rattling the windows, and felt a surge of fear and resolve. He realized that his daughter had been living a double life, caught in a web of danger and deceit, and that she had left him the key to saving her, or avenging her, if it came to that. As he packed up the box and prepared to leave, John knew that the journey ahead would be more dangerous than anything he'd faced before. But he also knew that he would do whatever it took to protect his daughter, to bring her home, and to make sure that Victor, and anyone else who threatened his family, would pay for what they'd done. The first letter had opened a door to a world of secrets and danger, and John was ready to walk through it, no matter the cost. John drove back into town with the box on the passenger seat, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, every shadow in the rearview mirror a potential threat. The world outside felt different now. Every car that lingered behind him, every stranger's glance, every flicker of headlights on a side street set his nerves on edge. He replayed his daughter's video in his mind, her voice trembling as she begged him to trust only Alan. Alan had been a friend of the family for years, a detective with a reputation for honesty in a department that had seen its share of scandals. John parked 2 blocks from the precinct, not wanting to draw attention, and walked the rest of the way, the box tucked under his arm, his heart pounding with every step. The station was busy, the air thick with the smell of coffee and the low murmur of voices. John found Alan in his cramped office, the detective's face lighting up with surprise and concern. "John? What's going on?" John closed the door, his voice low. "It's about my daughter. She left me something, evidence. She said you're the only one she trusts." Alan's expression grew serious as John handed him the box and explained everything: the GPS, the farmhouse, the letters, the USB drive, Victor's threats. Alan listened in silence, his eyes narrowing as he scrolled through the files. "This is big, John. If half of this is true, it's not just Victor. There are people in City Hall, maybe even the department, who are involved." He locked the door, lowering his voice. "You can't go home. Not yet. If Victor knows you have this, you're in danger. Stay with me tonight. I'll make some calls, see who I can trust." John nodded, the reality of his situation settling over him like a weight. He called Linda, his daughter's mother, and told her he was safe but couldn't explain why. "Just trust me," he said, his voice thick with emotion. That night, John slept on Alan's couch, the box locked in a safe, the sound of police radios and distant sirens a constant reminder that the world had changed. In the early hours, Alan woke him. "I checked the files. There's enough here to start an investigation, but we have to be careful. If word gets out, your daughter could be in even more danger." John felt a surge of fear and guilt. Had he already put her at risk by following the GPS, by opening the box? Alan put a hand on his shoulder. "We'll find her, John. But you have to trust me. No one else." As dawn broke, John looked out the window at the city, the streets washed clean by rain, and realized that he was in the middle of something much bigger than himself. The secrets his daughter had uncovered were dangerous, and now they were his to carry. But as he watched the sun rise, John made a silent promise: he would not let fear stop him. He would fight for his daughter, for the truth, and for the chance to bring her home. The journey had only just begun, and the next step would be the most dangerous yet. The city was just waking up, the streets washed clean by the night's rain, when John and Alan sat hunched over the evidence in Alan's cramped office, the blinds drawn tight against prying eyes. Alan's phone buzzed with encrypted messages from a trusted contact in the cyber crimes unit, confirming that the USB drive's files were authentic and damning. "Victor's not just a thug," Alan muttered, scrolling through the data. "He's got connections in City Hall, the police, maybe even the courts. Your daughter was onto something big, John." The weight of it pressed down on John, fear and pride warring in his chest. He thought of his daughter's trembling voice in the video, the way she'd begged him to trust Alan and no one else. "We need to find her," John said, his voice raw. "If Victor knows I have this, he'll come after me. Or worse, he'll go after her." Alan nodded, his jaw set. "I'll put out quiet feelers. But you need to lay low. Don't go home. Don't use your credit cards. If you get any messages, any calls from numbers you don't know, tell me first." John agreed, exhaustion settling into his bones. He tried to rest on Alan's couch, but sleep wouldn't come. Every sound outside made him flinch, every shadow seemed to move. Around noon, Alan's phone buzzed again, a text from an unknown number, the words simple and chilling, "We know you have the box. Stay out of this, or you'll regret it." Alan showed John the message, his face grim. "They're watching. They know we're onto them." John's hands shook as he realized just how close the danger was. "What do we do?" Alan's eyes were hard. "We keep going. We're too deep to back out now. But you need to be ready for anything." That afternoon, as they left the precinct to meet Alan's contact at a safe location, John noticed a black SUV idling across the street, its windows tinted, the engine running. He felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. "That's them, isn't it?" Alan nodded, steering John down a side alley. "Let's move." They ducked through a maze of back streets, Alan's hand never far from his holster, until they reached a nondescript cafe where a woman in plain clothes waited. She introduced herself as Detective Ramirez, Cybercrimes. "Your daughter was brave," she said, her voice low. "She got closer to Victor's operation than anyone else. But she's in real danger now. We need to find her before they do." John's fear crystallized into resolve. "Tell me what to do." Ramirez handed him a burner phone. "If she contacts you, call me. And if you see that SUV again, don't try to be a hero. We'll handle it." As night fell, John sat in the shadows of Alan's apartment, the city lights flickering outside, the box of evidence locked in a safe. He replayed his daughter's video, her plea for help, her promise that she'd left him everything he needed. The warning from Victor's men echoed in his mind, but so did his daughter's faith in him. He realized that the only way out was through, to keep pushing, to keep fighting, to trust Alan and Ramirez, and to believe that he could still save his daughter. The next move was Victor's, but John was ready. The game had changed, and this time, he wasn't playing by anyone else's rules. The city was a maze of secrets and shadows as John sat in Alan's apartment, the burner phone Ramirez had given him resting on the table like a loaded gun. He barely slept, his mind replaying the warning from Victor's men and the memory of his daughter's trembling voice. Just after midnight, the phone buzzed, a single text from an unknown number. "Dad, it's me. I'm safe for now. Don't trust anyone but Alan and Ramirez. If you want to find me, use the code in the GPS history. Love you." John's heart leapt. He showed Alan the message, and together they pored over the GPS logs from the SUV, searching for anything that looked out of place. There, buried among the usual addresses, grocery stores, the old family cabin, her college apartment, was a string of numbers and letters, N47.1234E8.5678, 4-2-7-9. Alan's eyes narrowed. Coordinates, obviously, but what's the second part? John thought back to the box in the farmhouse, the letters, the USB drive. He remembered a page in his daughter's journal, a list of favorite books and a sequence of numbers next to each title. It's a book cipher, he realized. She used to do this as a kid, hide messages in the pages of her favorite novels. They raced to the SUV, digging through the back seat until they found a battered copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, the spine cracked and pages dog-eared. John flipped to page 427, line 9, his hands shaking. The line read, "Trust the one who stands in the shadows." Alan nodded, understanding. She means Ramirez. She's telling us to meet Ramirez at the coordinates. The next morning, they drove out of the city, following the GPS through winding roads and dense forest until they reached a small, abandoned church on the edge of a forgotten town. Ramirez was waiting, her car parked discreetly behind the building. "You got the message," she said, her relief obvious. "Your daughter's been in contact with me, but she's scared to come in. Victor's men are everywhere." John's fear flared, but so did his resolve. "What do we do?" Ramirez handed him a map, marked with a series of safe houses and drop points. "She's moving every night. But she left something for you in the church," another clue. Inside, the church was cold and silent, the air thick with dust and the scent of old wood. John found a small envelope taped beneath a pew, his daughter's handwriting on the front, "For Dad, don't give up." Inside was a photo of her, smiling but tired, and a note, "I'm close to breaking the case. Trust Ramirez. I love you." John's eyes filled with tears, the weight of hope and fear almost too much to bear. Alan put a hand on his shoulder. "We're getting closer, John. She's alive. She's fighting." As they left the church, John felt a surge of determination. The code had brought him one step closer to his daughter, but the danger was growing. Victor's men were closing in, and time was running out. But for the first time, John believed they had a chance. The next move was theirs, and he was ready to risk everything to bring his daughter home. The drive back from the church was tense, the forest pressing in on either side of the narrow road, every shadow a potential threat. John gripped the steering wheel, his mind racing with the clues his daughter had left, the hope in her message battling with the fear that Victor's men were always one step ahead. Alan sat beside him, scanning the rearview mirror, while Ramirez followed in her unmarked car, her presence a silent reassurance. They had a plan: meet at the next safe house, review the evidence, and coordinate with the task force Ramirez had quietly assembled. But as they rounded a bend near an old logging road, the world exploded into chaos. A black SUV roared out of the trees, blocking their path, and two men in dark jackets leapt out, guns drawn. Out of the car, one shouted, his voice cold and practiced. John's heart hammered as he and Alan raised their hands, stepping into the biting wind. Ramirez's car screeched to a halt behind them, and she was out in a flash, her badge raised, her own weapon drawn. "Police! Drop your weapons!" The standoff was electric, the forest suddenly alive with the sound of shouting, the glint of steel, the tension of lives hanging in the balance. One of Victor's men lunged for Alan, but Ramirez fired a warning shot into the air, sending birds scattering from the treetops. The men hesitated, then bolted for the woods, disappearing into the shadows. Ramirez called for backup, her voice steady but urgent. "We need units at the old logging road, now!" Alan checked John for injuries, his hands shaking. "You okay?" John nodded, adrenaline surging through his veins. "We can't stop now. They know we're close." Ramirez agreed, her eyes hard. "They're getting desperate. That means your daughter is even more valuable to them, or more dangerous." As the backup arrived and the scene was secured, John found a scrap of paper on the ground, dropped in the chaos. It was a map, marked with a red X and a date, tonight. Alan's eyes widened. "It's a meeting. Victor's meeting someone tonight. If we can get there first, we can end this." Ramirez nodded, her jaw set. "We'll go in undercover. John, you stay with me. Alan, you coordinate with the task force." The plan was risky, but it was their best shot. As dusk fell, John sat in the back of Ramirez's car, the city lights flickering in the distance, his mind replaying every moment that had led him here. He thought of his daughter, her courage, her fear, her faith in him. He realized that the true cost of the secrets they'd uncovered was not just danger, but the risk of losing each other forever. As they drove toward the meeting point, John made a silent vow: he would not let Victor win. He would not let fear define his family story. The ambush had shaken him, but it had also steeled his resolve. Tonight, he would face the darkness, and fight for the daughter he loved. Night fell heavy and fast as John and Ramirez parked a block from the warehouse marked on the map, the city's glow barely reaching the abandoned industrial district. The air was thick with tension, every sound amplified, the distant bark of a dog, the hum of a passing train, the crunch of gravel under their boots as they moved in silence toward the meeting point. Ramirez checked her weapon, her eyes scanning the shadows, her voice low. "Stay close, John. If anything goes wrong, you run. Don't look back." John nodded, his heart pounding, the memory of his daughter's voice in the video fueling his courage. They slipped through a gap in the fence, the warehouse looming ahead, its windows dark, a single light burning above a side door. Inside, voices echoed, Victor's unmistakable growl, the nervous laughter of men who thought they were untouchable. Ramirez signaled for John to wait, then moved ahead, her badge hidden, her steps silent. John pressed himself against the wall, straining to hear. Suddenly, a figure stepped out of the shadows behind him, a man in plain clothes, his face familiar. It was Detective Harris, Alan's old partner, the one who'd vouched for the task force. "John, what are you doing here?" Harris hissed, his eyes darting nervously. "You shouldn't be here. This is bigger than you know." John's blood ran cold. "You're with them," he whispered, realization dawning. Harris's face twisted with regret. I didn't have a choice. Victor has people everywhere. If you go in there, you'll get yourself killed, and you'll ruin everything we've built. John's anger flared. You're protecting him? After what he did to my daughter? Harris shook his head. I'm trying to keep you alive. Ramirez doesn't know who to trust. Alan's in danger too. You need to leave, now. But before John could respond, a gunshot rang out inside the warehouse, followed by shouts and the sound of running feet. Ramirez's voice crackled over the radio. It's a setup. Harris, where are you? Harris cursed, pulling John into the shadows. Stay down. If Victor sees you, it's over. John's mind raced. He couldn't leave Ramirez, couldn't abandon his daughter's only hope. He broke free from Harris's grip, darting toward the warehouse just as the doors burst open and Victor's men spilled out, guns drawn, panic in their eyes. Ramirez tackled one, her badge flashing, but was quickly outnumbered. John grabbed a metal pipe from the ground, adrenaline and fear making him reckless. He swung at the nearest thug, the impact jarring his arms, and shouted for Ramirez. She tossed him her spare cuffs, and together they fought their way to the back of the warehouse, where Alan was being held at gunpoint. Drop it! Ramirez yelled, her voice fierce. The standoff was tense, the air crackling with danger. In the chaos, John saw his daughter, alive, bruised but defiant, locked in a storage room. He lunged for the door, smashing it open, and pulled her into his arms. Dad, you found me, she sobbed, relief and terror mingling in her voice. I knew you would. As the police sirens wailed in the distance, Victor tried to escape, but Harris, his conscience finally winning, tackled him to the ground, cuffs snapping shut. The warehouse was swarmed by officers, the danger finally over. John held his daughter close, the weight of fear and hope crashing over him. The betrayal had nearly cost them everything, but in the end, love and courage had prevailed. As dawn broke over the city, John realized that the fight was not just for justice, but for the soul of his family, and that, together, they had survived the darkness. The days after the warehouse raid passed in a blur of police interviews, hospital visits, and the slow, painful process of piecing together the full extent of Victor's crimes. John stayed by his daughter's side as she recovered, her bruises fading but her spirit unbroken. Alan and Ramirez worked tirelessly, building a case so airtight that even the most corrupt officials in City Hall couldn't ignore it. The media caught wind of the story, and soon the headlines blared with words like conspiracy, corruption, and heroic father. But for John, the real battle was fought in the quiet moments, holding his daughter's hand as she testified, reassuring her that she was safe, and facing his own guilt for not seeing the danger sooner. The trial was public and brutal, the courtroom packed with reporters, city officials, and the families of other victims. Victor sat at the defense table, his arrogance gone, his eyes hollow as the evidence was laid out, the USB drive, the recordings, the testimony of Harris, who, in a final act of redemption, confessed to his role in the cover-up and named every official on Victor's payroll. John's daughter took the stand, her voice trembling at first but growing stronger as she recounted the threats, the blackmail, the fear that had haunted her every step. She spoke of her father's courage, of the night he found her message in the GPS, of the hope that had kept her going when everything seemed lost. The jury listened, rapt, as Allen and Ramirez presented the mountain of evidence, each piece a nail in the coffin of Victor's defense. When John was called to testify, he spoke simply and honestly, his love for his daughter shining through every word. "I would have done anything to protect her," he said, his voice steady. "But in the end, she saved herself. I just followed the trail she left for me." The judge's verdict was swift and decisive. Victor and his associates were found guilty on all counts, sentenced to decades in prison. Harris, though facing his own punishment, was granted leniency for his cooperation. The courtroom erupted in applause, and John's daughter wept with relief, her ordeal finally at an end. As they left the courthouse, the city bathed in golden afternoon light, John felt a peace settle over him, a sense that justice had been served, that the darkness had finally lifted. But he also knew that healing would take time, that the scars of betrayal and fear would linger. That night, as they sat together on the porch, John and his daughter talked about the future, about forgiveness, about rebuilding, about the strength they'd found in each other. The reckoning was over, but the journey toward peace had only just begun. The weeks after the trial felt like a slow, gentle thaw, as if the world was finally letting John and his daughter breathe again. The city's headlines faded, the reporters moved on, and the phone calls from lawyers and detectives grew less frequent. For the first time in months, John found himself waking up without a knot of dread in his stomach. His daughter, though still haunted by nightmares, began to reclaim her life, returning to work, reconnecting with friends, and even laughing again over coffee in the kitchen. One morning, as John was cleaning out the SUV that had started it all, he found a thank you card tucked into the glove box. "Dad, you saved me. I love you. Let's make this count." The words brought tears to his eyes, a reminder that the pain they'd endured could be transformed into something good. That afternoon, a letter arrived from the local university, inviting John and his daughter to speak at a seminar on resilience and family. "Your story has inspired so many," the letter read. "We believe it could help others find the courage to seek justice." John hesitated, unsure if he was ready to share the darkest chapter of his life with strangers, but his daughter squeezed his hand. "If our story can help even one person, it's worth it." They spent evenings preparing, writing, and rewriting their speech, practicing in the living room until the words felt like their own. The night of the seminar, the auditorium was packed. John spoke first, his voice steady as he described the moment he found the GPS address, the fear and determination that had driven him to follow the trail. He spoke of the pain of betrayal, the terror of the unknown, and the fierce love that had kept him going. His daughter followed, her words raw and honest as she recounted her ordeal, her mistakes, and the hope that had carried her through. The applause was thunderous, and afterward, people lined up to thank them, to share their own stories, to ask for advice. The university offered to fund a new program for survivors of crime, and John's daughter was asked to help design it. The experience transformed them both. John found new purpose in helping others, his pain transformed into compassion, his scars a testament to the possibility of renewal. His daughter, too, discovered a sense of belonging and responsibility she'd never known. As the weeks passed, father and daughter grew closer, their bond forged in the crucible of hardship and healing. The GPS, once a symbol of mystery and fear, now sat on the dashboard as a reminder that sometimes, the road to redemption begins with a single, unexpected message. The greatest revenge, John realized, was not in retribution, but in living well, in building a life of dignity, kindness, and hope. As they walked home from the seminar, the stars bright above and the city quiet around them, John put his arm around his daughter's shoulders and smiled. "We made it, kid. We really did." And for the first time, she smiled back, the weight of the past finally lifting as they stepped into the future together. The new program at the university flourished, drawing survivors and advocates from across the city, and John found himself busier than ever, mentoring, speaking, and helping others find their own paths to healing. His daughter thrived in her new role, her confidence growing with every life she touched, her laughter returning in full. Yet even as the days filled with hope, a shadow lingered at the edge of their happiness. One evening, as John was locking up the community center, a courier arrived with a registered letter. The return address was the state penitentiary. John's hands shook as he opened it, the paper heavy and creased, the handwriting unfamiliar but unmistakably careful. It was from Victor. "Mr. Miller, I know I have no right to ask for your time, but I wanted you to know that I am sorry. Prison has a way of stripping a man down to the truth. I was wrong. I hurt your daughter, and I hurt you. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope you can find peace. I am trying to do the same." John read the letter twice, his emotions a storm of anger, relief, and something like pity. He showed it to his daughter, who read it in silence, her face unreadable. "What do we do with this?" she asked quietly. John thought for a long moment, then spoke softly. "We let it go. We let him go. We've done everything we can. The rest is up to him." That night, they sat together on the porch, the city lights twinkling in the distance, the air filled with the scent of blooming jasmine. They talked about the past, the future, and the promise to honor their journey by living with courage, kindness, and forgiveness. The pain of what Victor had done would never fully disappear, but it no longer held them captive. Instead, they chose to remember the lessons learned, that dignity is worth fighting for, that forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, and that family, at its best, is a place where even the deepest wounds can be healed. As the stars appeared overhead and the world grew quiet, John realized that the greatest revenge was not in retribution, but in the quiet, steady work of building a life worth living, one day at a time. The last ghost of the past had been laid to rest, and the future, though still uncertain, was theirs to shape. The day of the program's first graduation dawned bright and full of promise, sunlight streaming through the windows of the university's old auditorium. John arrived early, his heart pounding with a mix of pride and disbelief as he watched the staff set up rows of chairs, hang banners, and arrange bouquets of wildflowers on the stage. His daughter was everywhere at once, hugging nervous graduates, checking the sound system, and laughing with volunteers who had become like family. The room filled quickly, a tapestry of faces, survivors who had found their voices, families who had learned to forgive, and community leaders who had once doubted but now believed. As the ceremony began, John sat in the front row, his hands folded tightly in his lap, his eyes shining with tears. The first speaker was a young woman who had arrived at the shelter with nothing but a backpack and a broken spirit. She spoke of the night she'd heard John and his daughter's story, of the hope it had given her, of the courage it had sparked. "I realized I wasn't alone," she said, her voice trembling but strong. "If they could survive, so could I." The applause was thunderous, and as each graduate crossed the stage, John felt the weight of the past lift a little more. When it was his daughter's turn to speak, she stood tall and radiant, her words ringing with gratitude and resolve. "We are not defined by what was done to us, but by what we choose to do next. My father taught me that forgiveness is not weakness, but strength. That love is not a debt, but a gift." She looked at John, her eyes full of love and pride, and he felt his heart swell. After the ceremony, the room buzzed with celebration, hugs, laughter, and the clink of glasses as people toasted to new beginnings. John found himself surrounded by friends, old and new, each one eager to thank him, to share their own stories, to ask for advice. He realized that the greatest legacy was not the justice they had won, but the lives they had changed, the hope they had inspired, the family they had rebuilt from the ashes of pain. As the sun set and the last guests drifted away, John and his daughter stood together on the steps of the auditorium, the city lights twinkling in the distance. "We did it, Dad," she whispered, her voice full of wonder. "We really did." John hugged her, his heart full. "We did it together, kid. And we'll keep doing it, one day at a time." The pain of the past would never fully disappear, but it no longer defined them. Instead, they chose to remember the lessons learned, that dignity is worth fighting for, that family is built on trust and second chances, and that the truest victory is not in payback, but in the courage to love, forgive, and begin again. As the stars appeared overhead and the world grew quiet, John closed his eyes, grateful for the journey, and ready for whatever tomorrow might bring. The day of the program's first graduation dawned bright and full of promise, the city's skyline gleaming in the morning sun as John and his daughter made their way to the university auditorium. The halls were alive with nervous excitement, graduates in borrowed suits and dresses, their families clutching bouquets, the staff bustling to set out chairs and refreshments. John felt a swell of pride as he watched his daughter move through the crowd, her head held high, her smile genuine and unguarded. She greeted each graduate by name, offering hugs and words of encouragement, her own journey a beacon for those who still carried the weight of old wounds. The ceremony was simple but profound. One by one, the graduates took the stage, sharing stories of survival and hope, of nights spent in fear and days spent fighting for a second chance. John listened, his heart full, as each speaker thanked the program for giving them the tools to rebuild their lives. When it was his daughter's turn, she spoke with a quiet strength that brought tears to more than a few eyes. "We are not defined by what was done to us," she said, her voice steady. We are defined by what we choose to do next. By the courage to forgive, to heal, and to help others do the same. The applause was thunderous, and as she stepped down, John hugged her tightly, his own eyes wet. "You did it, kid," he whispered. "You really did." After the ceremony, the graduates and their families gathered in the courtyard, laughter and music filling the air. John found himself surrounded by people whose lives had been changed by the program, men and women who had once been lost, now found, their futures bright with possibility. Alan and Ramirez were there too, their friendship with John and his daughter now forged in the fires of shared struggle and victory. As the sun set and the city lights flickered on, John stood with his daughter at the edge of the crowd, watching the celebration unfold. "I never thought we'd have this again," she said softly. "I never thought I'd feel safe." John squeezed her hand, his heart overflowing with gratitude. "We earned it. Every bit of it." They stood together in the golden light, the pain of the past now a distant memory, the future wide open. The celebration was more than a party, it was a declaration that the past would not define them, that the greatest legacy was not justice or revenge, but the courage to love, forgive, and begin again. As the stars appeared overhead and the world grew quiet, John closed his eyes, grateful for the journey, and ready for whatever tomorrow might bring.